Ahora tenemos a Dennis Tam. I will speak un poquito en español. Él es el director de...
The director of VeriSign company. It is a registry. He works for this registry. It is a company with the database of domain names and can also sell. There was a time when it was not possible, and they work vertically, and it is the biggest. It is the one coordinating .com, .net, and many more high-level domains.
Me okay?
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you very well. Where are you?
I'm in Reston, Virginia.
Okay, fantastic. So it's not a bad time for you. Thank you for being with us. I was just briefing our fellows about the, what is it, registry and the role of VeriSign, which is the largest registry in the world, with a very high concentration of this industry lately. They have many companies that have been buying among themselves. So, sorry? Okay, Adrián is telling me that you speak perfectly Spanish, so should I switch to Spanish or I keep English? Whatever you prefer.
Como quieras ahora, cual sea la preferencia de la audiencia.
Entonces les estaba contando...
I was telling you the very important role of VeriSign, and I would like to thank VeriSign because it's been a sponsor for the school many years, and the economic support. Apart from the institutional support, it is very important to bring interns from Latin American countries to Mexico, and we will have this virtual infrastructure to have you here. It is just like having you with us in this room. Without further ado, I will give you the floor over. We already have the presentation, and technical people have your presentation. Thanks for being with us, and we now listen to you. Thanks, Olga. Good, and thanks for the invitation to talk to you. My presentation is going to be a very general presentation, but at the end, I am happy to answer your questions. Let's start. The topic of today is Internet and activities to fight abuse of Internet. The open and resilient. When we go to the next one, please. Good. We know the Internet, and I believe we all know that it has good things, advantages, disadvantages, but it also has challenges. Some of the advantages, the internet we know will give us access to a wider spectrum of information quickly, will facilitate global communications regardless of the geographical barriers or language barriers, and it makes this economic activity possible internationally, globally, 24 hours a day, 24 by 7, non-stop. But there are challenges, criminal challenges. Criminals use it or misuse internet to commit crime. And in general, we're speaking about two types of abuse. One is misuse or abuse of DNS in itself. It means that they use the DNS, the protocol, in order to attack using the DNS infrastructure. And one of the examples of this attack against infrastructure, which is distributed denial of service. To simplify what they do, they send queries and DNS transactions to some websites or infrastructure to make to have a server down, like other computing resources, the computing capacity, and by having the to attack, they are trying to make that infrastructure collapse, and this is the abuse against DNS. Another type of abuse we'll speak about is via DNS abuse, where the infrastructure is used to distribute, for example, malware. Here we're speaking about the malware spectrum, virus, Trojan agents, etc., botnets, etc., that will cause evil things in our computers. This is first to simplify, and DNS infrastructure is also used to set and to have websites to then destroy and to do phishing attacks. We're speaking about this type of websites that publish, those are copies, for example, of a bank. What for? Why do they use that copy for? To have access to the user credentials who believe they are having access to the legal bank to make a transaction, but they are actually and just entering their IDs in a copy, and then the criminals are going to have access to the user and the password to then be able to empty the accounts and do other things. And this is an example of how uh, bad people abuse infrastructure via DNS. So in this presentation, we're going to be speaking about this type of abuse via DNS. And we can now go to the next slide. And speaking about this abuse via DNS, we're speaking about the ecosystem and the industry of domain names. And I will be making I will stop here to speak about this industry. Later we will see a slide and that better shows on this. But when we speak about the industry of name domains, we're speaking about three entities. ICANN, the regulating entity. ICANN means Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers. This is the regulating entity that manages, coordinates the distribution of domain names at a high level, as well as IP address blocks. On the other hand, again, we have VeriSign or registries. VeriSign, our work is to we manage and we manage domain names, and we facilitate the denial of domain names and IP addresses, and we facilitate then scrolling through these domain names. On the other hand, we have the registrants and registrars. These are the entities with which the end user is going to be in touch. You can buy a domain name, and in some cases, you can even buy hosting so that you can host your website to have your email addresses and other adjacent services for online presence and e-commerce. So again, when we speak about the domain names, we're speaking about ICANN registries, high-level registries, and registrars, who are the registradores, registrars. Those are the three ones we will focus on. What is the type of activity we've been doing in this ecosystem, in this industry, in order to fight abuse via DNS? Here you have an example, only an example of what we have done in the last 4 years. Abuse is something that we have discussed many years in ICANN, but we do not have time now. We have limited time to speak about this, and these are only a few examples. Let's start with the best practices. The CPH. This is another acronym. If you follow ICANN, you're going to listen and you're going to see in the documents and in the session. CPH is the acronym for Contracted Party House, and this is a combination of registry and the registrars. Why? Because we have agreements with ICANN, and this is how ICANN governs services and obligations that we need to stick to. So registries and registrars together, this is going to be the contracted parties house. And as an industry, we develop certain best practices. One of those, one very important one, is how to report abuse via DNS, how to make the report to us and to the registrars, because they are closer to those who are the registrants of the domain names, and they are the ones who can mitigate the abuse with them. And why do I want to say this is important? How to report abuses, cases of abuse. For example, if you or if we are notified about phishing, we need certain elements, we need some components in order to verify that information and to take some measures at a very general level. How phishing is reported, we need evidence that there is an intention to replace the identity, for example, to take someone else's identity. This would be a copycat of the website of a bank. It clearly tries to replace the identity of the bank or steal the identity, and secondly, it wants to have access to sensitive information. For example, the password and the username. That is it is at a very basic level what we are looking for when phishing is reported. And when Olga gives you this presentation, and you will have access to these links, and you will be able to see in detail all this information. Other best practices that have been developed at this mobile association level, MARC, anti-abuse messaging. I do not remember the meaning of this acronym, but it is an organization that deals with the best practices in different areas. One of those is registries and registrars, and we also have other best practices we have so that we can fight distribution of malware and botnets at the level of registries. This is speaking about the best practices and that we implement. And we also make it available to other registrars which are not part of the ICANN community. And speaking about ICANN, last year, new obligations were implemented at a contractual level, and with this contractual level obligations and registries and registrars included in their agreements with ICANN. Now ICANN has better tools in order to enforce and to have clarity when the registrars see abuse report. There is clarity to know which are the steps to be taken by the registrars or the registries in order to mitigate or to remove abuse in a domain name in the website. And here it is important to establish some differences. This is something that at the DNS level, the level of registries and registrars, there is a tool, they have a tool, and this is to simply suspend the domain name. And suspending the domain name, it would mean that all the services are going to be offline. And by having this tool, you need to be very careful to know when it has to be used. When we speak about phishing or abuse, we need to establish when the registrar receives an abuse information. This phishing has to be established, and the domain name at a second level, or if it is in one part of the website where the website operator has been a victim of hacking. and the phishing website will simply receive in one portion of the website, but not the whole website. So we want to minimize. We don't want website operators and users, we don't want them to be victims of suspension. And instead of suspending the domain name, what they would need to do is to contact the hosting company and to be able to take the page down from the tree website structure. I hope this is clear to you. Now let's move on to the third point. We've seen the best practices, compliance, better contract or agreement tools. ICANN, and this organization has introduced some tools. ICANN Domain Metrica, and this is a metrics tool. They all have access, and if you have an ICANN account, and if you have ever attended an ICANN conference, you have a username, and that would allow you to use some metrics, and you will be able to see how ICANN measures the level of abuse in the industry in general. Another project is a study, the Inferma, and this informal, and it means informational analysis on malicious registrations, and what it is studied, or what it is studied in a specific time range. It is studied the names of domains that were registered with the intention to distribute malware and to distribute phishing to phishing websites. And what I did was to distribute and to try to find a correlation between which are the attributes offered by registrars, which attributes could be more appealing to the eyes of this type of registries. The correlation between name of domains that were registered with a criminal intention and the attributes that registrars have used. That is an interesting study. If you have the time, I recommend you to read it and to draw your own conclusions. And it is important, and it is a segue for the next point of this slide. All this information, all these studies will help us take another step in that the industry is taking to keep making progress and to evolve on how we mitigate, how we fight this abuse via DNS. Last year, as I said, registrars, ICANN, and the contracted parties established new obligations to increase the number of minimum obligations each time we receive an abuse report, but it is not the end. We see what other opportunities to improve there are, and this is what happens. This is what happens in June when the ICANN community is going to be together again in order to address other problems. They will meet in Prague. The next slide, please. And this is precisely what we will be doing in the next steps. This industry, again, ICANN, registries and registrars, we're going to start the conversation to see other opportunities to improve. And what we want to do is to increase where we can resolve specific problems. It is not to boil the ocean. We want to resolve a big problem. We want to resolve a specific problem, and we will be able to resolve it relatively fast, because we know that criminals quickly adapt to any change by the industry in order to fight this abuse. So the regulations and policies have to adapt and be specific and try to resolve this problem and to develop them effectively, efficiently. And obviously, as you know, the governance system of ICANN is based on a consensus. Many players have the opportunity to share their voices, opinions, and in this way they try to solve the problem we are dealing with and we are facing. Can we please go back to this slide? This is another point. As I said, the internet ecosystem is not only domain names. We also have organizations and companies that distribute content, they host content, and they also act at different levels. And in this ecosystem, and they also have responsibilities and they have some technical capacities that can help mitigate and fight abuse. They do not participate in ICANN. There are other venues so that we can collaborate with the system. And we want to find good practices where information cannot be shared or to automate reports and collaboration in general across the industry. And the ICANN is a unique governance system, but it is limited to registries and registrars. How to collaborate through in this ecosystem? It has challenges, obviously, and organizations which are distributed across the world through technologies. But there is a will by this industry to collaborate and to try to mitigate this abuse at the level of system, not individually, and our silos, not as silos. Now we can see the next slide, and I believe this is the last one, and it is open to questions and to respond to your comments or observations. Let's give him a round of applause. Thanks for this presentation. I have two questions. I have two questions. And introduce yourself. Thanks for your brilliant presentation. I am Javier from Peru, University of Lima. I would like to ask you something. In Peru, there is a neutrality of the network. It includes blocking domains, soccer, the ones that stream movies like Cuevana, and for the streaming of soccer games, and it is network neutrality. But if we take it to engineering level, the blocking will be done by blocking DNS. So the DNS of Cuevana.tv, and they will identify the IP. And then this is how this IP is going to be blocked. And each time they do this, they will be blocking up to the 400 internet domains. And I would like to know if it is the engineering version, if it is possible. Because we talk to kids when we are teaching computer networks, and then they say 8.8, 8.8, the one by Google, and that's it. So I want to know your opinion on this now that you're speaking about DNS. Thanks so much. What is your name? Your name? Javier More from Peru. Javier. I am Peruvian. I am from the University of Lima as well. Thanks for your question. what you say, let me first see the problem and the different components that have been mentioned. One is content that I think is illegal because of blocking, etc. There is a copyright thing, a copyright issue. You also spoke about IP blocking, and I believe this is at the ISP level, Internet Service Provider. um, at that level. So this is part. The ISP is one of the levels of this internet system. ISPs do not participate, and those are not regulated by ICANN, which is the domain names. What I have read is that there are some governments, unlike domain names, ISP is sitting it is telecommunications. This is where the local government will have more participation and more power. And as you said, in the case of Peru, I have also read about cases such as the case of Germany, where at the government level it is a direction. It is a judicial order where the ISP, since it is a government regulated entity, this order has to be followed and they need to simply block. And as you said in the example, when blocking one IP address, potentially you are blocking not only what they want to remove and take down from internet, which is a website that is distributing, that is infringing copyright, but other online services which are associated to that IP. And this is where we have similarities when we speak about DNS. And this measure is not proportional because when blocking one IP, you are blocking several services. The same would happen, for example. It is simply an example because I think we all know an example of this. We all know Facebook. What if we want Facebook.com to get suspended because harmful comments are found, or because malware is being distributed in one of the URLs that you can find in the comment section of Facebook? I will give you an example of how it is possible to fight abuse proportionally. It is not through this taking at the name of Facebook.com and now down, because we know it is a big system, but it can also then use another website for a smaller business, but it will have a forum, for example, and if you are or a link distributing malware and they ask for the suspension of the domain name of that website of that small company, then all services will get suspended. So here, what you are saying is important, which is proportionality in DNS or the ISP level, and all these services that distribute content multi-geographically. Thanks, Denise. Thanks for your question. Are there more questions? I have one question. Do you think, now that we have new TLDs, we have many new TLDs as of 2012, and now, as of next year, with the new round, there are going to be there going to be more attacks against DNS specifically, because VeriSign should have security infrastructure, world-class security infrastructure everywhere, taking care of all databases, and I do not know if all the others will have the same level of security, and what happens to the different countries. Can they all have the same level of security? And isn't it security stressful for all the different interconnections with the databases of domain names? Thanks for your question, Olga.
Sí,
Yes,
definitivamente al expandir
by expanding.
bueno, déjame dar un paso
And
atrás.
let me take one step
Los
back.
criminales siempre van a buscar
Criminals will
cómo
always look for
poder
a
hacerse
way
experiencia.
to
Siempre
commit
están
crime. They
constantemente
are
adaptándose,
always getting
usando nuevas
adapted. They are
tecnologías.
using new
Ahora ya que
technologies.
todas estas
Now that we
nuevos
have all
software y
these new
tecnologías que
software and
hacen
creation
acceso infinito
technologies and
rápidamente,
fast content
estoy hablando
creation,
¿no? de lo que normalmente se refiere
I
como
am not
inteligencia
speaking
artificial,
about AI
están
as normally
constantemente cambiando
referred to,
y
but
siempre
this
van
is
a buscar
constantly
por
changing,
dónde
and
poder,
they will always
qué
look
herramientas pueden
for
usar.
tools
Nombre de dominio,
tools to be used.
lamentablemente, es algo
Domain
que siempre
names,
vamos
unfortunately, this is something they will always
pero
use,
eso no va a
and
cambiar.
I believe this will not change.
Ahora, cómo
Now,
los
how
LDs,
TLDs,
los nombres de alto nivel,
high
pueden,
and level
digamos,
names, how
contrarrestar
it
esas
can go
actividades, sí, es
against
una
all
pregunta
those
importante.
activities, and yes, this is an
Argumenté
important question.
acá, de
Now,
repente acá sirve una distinción,
here we have
y quiero
one
mencionar, ¿no?
distinction we need to
Uno
make, and
es
you
los
said it.
nombres de alto
One
nivel
is
regulados por
high-level
ICANN,
names
que
regulated by
son los
ICANN, which
GTLD,
is a
top-level
GTLDs,
names,
generic
y
top-level
son los
domain names, and the
SSIG, Country
CCTLDs,
Related
country
TLDs.
code TLDs.
Los
And
GTLDs están regulados
GTLDs
por
are
ICANN
regulated by
y por
ICANN,
ende
and
necesitan tener
this is why it should have the
de
minimum
operación.
number of operational
Con
standards.
otros
One
van
of
a tener
those
cierta
is to have certain level
disponibilidad.
of availability.
Entonces, eso tiene cierta indicación
So
de que
there is an
necesitan
indication
tener unos sistemas robustos
they need to
para
have
que puedan
robust systems
sobrevivir
so that
o mitigar
they
cualquier
can
tipo de ataque.
mitigate any type of attack.
En el lado de country codes,
Speaking
ahí de
about the
repente
country codes,
es un poco más variable,
it is going to
algunos
be more
están
variable.
regulados
They
por
are not
ICANN,
all ICANN
dependen de la
regulated, and
negociación
they depend on the
pero la
regulation of those
disponibilidad de
governments,
repente
and
es
availability
diferente.
is different.
Pero es una pregunta
But it
importante
is an important question,
y
yes.
pero creo
But
que
I believe,
sí, estoy tratando de buscar la palabra.
I'm trying to look for a word, for the right word.
Los GTLs, al tener
GTLDs, by
esas
having
reglas
this
mínimas requiriendo de
minimum
operación,
operational
disponibilidad,
requirements, operation
necesitan
availability,
tener ¿no?
they
un
need to
sistema robusto.
have a robust system. Do we have more questions for Dennis? One more applause for Dennis.
Gracias a ustedes.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for your Spanish, because everything is easier for everyone. It is not the language you speak when working, but thanks so much. Thanks, and Danny, I'll see you in Prague. Greetings from the interns and from Adrian. Thanks, and